Good evening, everyone. My name is Mr. Willis. I am the resource room math teacher at Burncoat High School. Welcome to Know Your School Night. I'm going to go through sort of how my class runs, especially given the interesting nature of how we have to work with things online. On the other hand, other than the actual face-to-face interaction using Google Meet, which would be through the computer, the way that I run my class and my grading throughout the year, even without the pandemic and not being in school, is the same way. So these resources will be helpful for you once we do hopefully finally get back to school. So I teach Algebra 1, Geometry, and topics in Algebra and Geometry. So I will likely have your student for 3 years. Things may change because I've moved from Algebra 1 to Algebra 2, but most likely I will be teaching your student for 3 years. There's 2 major resources for this class. So we use Google Classroom as the basis for everything from grading to how to find assignments to how to actually get into the Google Meet, which would be the online class where we can have face-to-face interactions. For Google Classroom, there's the option for a Guardian summary. You can get summaries weekly, daily, or you can also choose not to have any summaries. If you're not listed as a Guardian on Google Classroom and you'd like to receive updates on your student, email me. There's also a website that has frequently asked questions about Guardians and Guardian summaries. If you'd like to look at it, tinyurl.com/BHS classroom. So students have a more interactive classroom than what the Guardians are able to see. So you will not necessarily have access to see what we're about to see from your account, but your student will. So if you want to see what some of these specific views are, you need to ask your student to sign into their classroom. So Google Meets, depending on when the classes are, they're going to sign on, go on to Google Classroom, and then there is a Meet link that will allow them to get on. They're usually the same, but sometimes they do change. So they would need to go to Classroom every time to find the Meet link. To see missing work and grades, you're going to click on Classwork. So once you're in the Google Classroom, you click on Classwork, then you click View Your Work. It will show you everything that's missing. Realize that at a certain point, I do have to change missing assignments into zeros. So please go back and make sure that if there's any zeros that you can turn those in. Usually you can turn in anything up through the end of the quarter, except some of the activators. We'll discuss activators in just a minute. So there are 5 assignment types in my classroom. So we have activators or do nows. They're called different things depending on which teacher it is. There's 1 per class. So this is what they do when they're coming into the classroom. It's usually assigned within 10 minutes prior to the class so that the students have the ability to get in and get this done as quickly as possible. It could be anything from a check-in to see how they're doing or how they're finding the work, whether they're understanding it or not, or it could be specific problems. So this is something that your student should be doing within the first 5 minutes of class. We also have classwork assignments. So classwork, we average about 2 assignments per week. Sometimes we get to 1, sometimes 3. So these are assignments that we're doing together in class, and then they may be assigned part of it to do on their own. For example, we do 1 through 6, and then they do 7 and 8 on their own. If they do not finish classwork in class, then they may have that assigned to finish after class. That is a rare occurrence, but it does happen, and it's usually if the students aren't working on their own when they're supposed to be in the middle of class. They get one assignment of homework per week. So that is something that is based on whatever topic we're covering at this point. So that could be anything from multi-step equations, which most of your students are currently working on, which will break out into different topics based on whether they're in algebra or geometry class or some combination. So there'll be quizzes, tests, eventually there'll be projects. We're still working through how exactly to work together as groups in the Google Classroom format, especially for students to be able to work together online. So we will eventually get to projects. They will be having tests and quizzes coming up. And then they also have independent work. So every Friday they will have an independent assignment. It should go live Friday morning. And then mostly it's actually going to be assignments with Alex, which is our other math program that we use, though it could also be other things like assignments to figure out how you are at using study skills, or if there's anything specific as a learning type that would be different for you. In Google Classroom, there's also within that classwork button, it has notes and instructions and course documents. Course documents are usually things that we're looking at for the whole year, such as the syllabus. Notes and instruction would be what we're covering in class, so they would be copies of the notes that we do. As I said, Alex is the other major program that we're using this year. It's an online math program that allows students to work at their own ability level. So it tries to find the holes that they have in their math background. So let's say that they hate fractions, which is something I hear from a lot of students. So it will show them and teach them how to work with fractions, even though it's not something that I'm covering currently in my class. This way, it builds up the background knowledge to make when they're going into algebra, geometry, and eventually algebra 2 much easier. To get into Alex, they need to sign into their Clever account. If they're using a school Chromebook, this is the website that would pop up whenever they are going on to Google Chrome. If they are using some a laptop or some other way of getting there, they need to go to clever.com, and then they would sign in through there using their Worcester account. So once they go into Clever, they're going to click on the McGraw-Hill. So McGraw-Hill is the company that sets up Alex. It will get them in there, and then it also has other resources within McGraw-Hill, including our textbook, and it will also have different resources for other classes as well, from history to science to English. So once they've clicked on McGraw-Hill, it's going to come up with a number of different classes. They need to make sure that at the top it says Burncoat High School. If it doesn't say Burncoat High, they may be trying to access classes from prior schools, from middle school or a different high school if they're coming in. They're going to click on the math class with the Alex label next to it. So they can either click on the title of the class, or they can click on the launch button, and that will actually get them up and running. There is extra help available. Every week I'm after school at 1:45. I'm also usually available Monday through Thursday at 9:50. Occasionally I do have meetings at that time. So the student should check with me ahead of time. And then other times may be available. I've met with students Thursdays after school, Fridays after school, possibly early on Tuesday or Thursday at 7:20. All of this is located in the Help and Coffee Time with Mrs. Lorraine and Mr. Willis classroom. So we set up a separate help classroom that we use both for extra help after class, but also it's a way for students to be able to go into a separate uh, class meeting to get individualized help from any of the staff members that are in the class, which could be me or it could be one of our instructional aides. So every student should have an invitation to be in the Help and Coffee Time classroom. If they're not, they just need to email me and I can add them quickly. If you have any questions, please either email me or give me a phone call. The email is listed above, willisa@worcesterschools.net. Please be careful on the spelling, especially the fact that it's schools with an S. And then the school phone number that I have is 401-285-7199. Hopefully this gives you a good overview of what my class is and how your students interact with my math class and with me.